afraid of the dark? Ghosts, goblins, and mummies trying to make an American hot dog out of your cop? You ever find yourself trying to go to sleep and too afraid that the tow monster or the boogeyman might try to drag you under your own bed? Ever find yourself trying to open your closet but too afraid the dick monster might grab onto your dick and cling onto it for the rest of its 8-year life? Whew. Well, if you were living in the early 1990s and you were watching Nickelodeon at nighttime, then Are You Afraid the Dark caused that, right? Wrong. This show is about the equivalence of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors in terms of it being scary. And I know a lot of you may be offended and be like, oh, when I was 6 years old, this was the scariest thing I ever seen on TV. Wrong. Like, hell no. The stories on here were so generic and they were so predictable, even a 6-year-old could figure that shit out. Now, this show I know was in Canada before it ran in the US on Nickelodeon. The first episode started on Halloween night in 1991, and the show ended in 1996. In 1999 to 2000, it ran again, or if I can remember right, that teen knit shit. The show was about your generic 1990s teenagers sitting around a campfire at nighttime with scary, creepy music playing. Yeah, let's get all the cinematic shots of doors slamming and people looking scared and crickets and all this shit. The show would always start off in the woods where these teenagers would go there every week, and it varied on who was going to tell the scary story each week. One week it might be Gary, the storyteller, one week it might be Kiki, the black girl, and the next week it might be Frank, the other creative storyteller. Now, the stories were your typical sleepover, scare me until I bust my first nut at 10 years old kind of stories. It would always be where the camera would get a close-up on them, get tapped by one of their friends, and then they jump to make you jump too. It was like the show had to force you to be scared, not the actual stories. Now, speaking of that, let's get into them. There was one story called Laughing in the Dark. It was about some yellow teeth-ass clown that stole some money from charity in the circus. The clown ran from the FBI agents, hid the money in the fun house, and after it caught on fire, it was said that the clown was killed in this fire. These kids thought that this story was just bullshit, so for our 1992 white boy hero Ouija is to the rescue, trying to warn everybody that the story isn't bullshit and that it's real. So if I know my scary stories well, then he will be the one to defeat the clown, right? Yeah. So this girl named Kelly follows him, and his friend Josh follows him around. And just like you expected, she's the one that's always getting scared but never wants to admit it. Man, I bet after these guys ended puberty, they probably made her into a fucking sex slave. And you really have to hear the phrases that she says. I mean, it really just cracks me the fuck up.
Tickle, tickle, tickle. Don't mess or I'll bung you in the head.
Where in the bloody balls do these kids come from? Who the hell says, don't mess or I'll bung you in the head? And who the fuck wrote the dialogue for these damn kids? Like, and not only that, why didn't they disagree and just say, nah, that sounds a little too corny. Let me come up with something else. Let me say something that's gonna be in fad with my early 90s counterparts. And of course, I forgot to mention this asshole Josh, who's the equivalence of every asshole written in every horror movie script. He's like Kathy the girl, but his ego is about the size of his giraffe-ass neck.
Why didn't you go in? In fact, I dare you to go in. Alone. Why?
Why?
I bet he likes to trap small children inside.
Sorry, my lad. I didn't mean to scare you. Gonna give it a go, huh?
Yeah, why not?
So Josh goes into the funhouse, and his attitude from being the big bad jock completely changes as he enters the carnival house from hell. Just like, what the fuck is going on in these doors? When he runs into the clown, he almost shits on himself. After making the bet with Ouija, he won the bet, and now Ouija feels bad that Josh is the so-called hero now. And now that he's the loser, he has to wear the clown's nose to school that Josh stole out of the clown place when he got it from the clown. When Josh gets home, he gets real delirious because his parents had to leave town, and now he's home by himself. The clown starts harassing him and doing all this weird shit to him, and now Josh admits to everybody that he's scared, and he's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. But more weird shit just continues to happen to him. So he comes to his senses and returns the clown's nose, and then he tries to ask for no hard feelings and shit. And then he gets him a box of cigars. Man, where the fuck does a 13-year-old buys a box of cigars? And then basically the story ends because the crazy old guy that you saw before was playing the clown the whole time. So after every episode, the real teenagers in the actual show end the story by trying to see who was scared, or some funny or some scary shit always happens at the end of each episode. The episode of the Frozen Ghost was a good episode too. Just like every other episode in the show, but it just wasn't scary. This story is about a boy named Charles who had to go to his aunt's house because his parents had to go to a wedding, and his 12-year-old babysitter named Daphne had to go with him. Okay, first of all, the kid looks like he's about at least 8 years old, so why does he have a 12-year-old babysitter? Unless she was using some kind of sex toy. Damn, I wish I had his parents. So as Charles and Daphne arrive, they find that Charles's aunt mentions something about a ghost. And since they're in an old house that looked kind of abandoned before they arrived at it, these imaginative kids think they're in a haunted house. And I forgot to mention how much of a dick rider Daphne is on Charles, telling him what to do every which way. I mean, it's like him having AIDS. Like, now that she's around, he completely has to change his life and have to abide to her rules. So when sitting at the dinner table, Charles and Daphne hear more details about the ghost tale. Daphne acts like she isn't scared of the ghost, and neither is Charles, right?
But I'm not afraid of ghosts, and neither is Charles. Are you, Charles?
Ghosts?
So later on that night, Charles had nightmares about the ghost stories, and eventually he looks outside and sees the ghost of the little boy. The next morning, after Charles changes his wet sheets, he tells his aunt about the little boy that he saw the previous night. Then the little boy keeps appearing at Charles's face and keeps saying, "I'm cold," and it's the funniest shit known to man. What the little boy really wanted was his coat, so after they give him the coat, they find a key that unlocks the safe to like 50 pounds of gold, and basically the story ends. That's a pretty scary story, huh? So as you see, the show was not really all that scary. I mean, especially when you look back on it when you're older. Now, they were creative episodes and they did make you think and wonder, but they just weren't scary to me. Now, if you think this was scary, try watching shows like Goosebumps or Tales from the Dark Side, or my personal reference, Unsolved Mysteries. So, that was Are You Afraid of the Dark, the show that came on Nickelodeon during the 90s. I ain't gonna lie, I really enjoyed that show. I take that back what I said about it now that I look back on these episodes. I liked the show, it just wasn't scary. So stop saying, "Oh, when I was 6 years old, this was the scariest thing you ever watched." Or, if you're saying that, then watch Unsolved Mysteries. So that's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Good night, everybody.